Hello everyone and welcome to Carolina Warrior TV and our preview of Fight Fort 15. Spartanburg, South Carolina will be the home of another amazing night of fights. Let's take a look at the fight card as it stands right now. A great night of kickboxing, amateur MMA, and some great pro fights on the card. One of those pro fighters is Shane Tyner. Now, Shane has been away from the fight scene for about 7 years now, and I started by asking him early in the week what brought him back.
I guess it's in my blood. You know, of course, with COVID and everything and life, it kind of took me away, and I was kind of forced into like a semi-retirement. But, it's like, I guess the stars were aligned and, everything just worked out to where I can sit back in there.
Yeah. What's changed for you in these past 7 years since you've been away?
Family situations. I got custody of my kids and, just life in general. I'm a grandpa now. And where I'm at, there's more places to train than there used to be. And, it's just financially, I'm able to focus on it. And whereas before, I guess in those 7 years, it's just, it's life. Things happen to pull you away, and you have no choice. But luckily everything's lined up for me that I can actually sit back in there. That's what I love to do.
You sort of touched on it there. Training now, you look like you're training at a place that for the past better part of this year. As far as I know you from the past, as far as say it wasn't like organized training, but it seems like now you're at a training facility now that you're in there in the gym with a couple of guys. Just talk about that to an extent.
Well, I used to train with Jimmy Fowler at Revolution MMA. And that's my home. It'll always be my home, But obviously with family and stuff, I can't get out there as much as I'd like. But there's a growing places around here as well as a couple hours away. There's some good places, So I mean, you remember back in Lumberton when you came down one time, there wasn't much of anything going on here. But we got the school that I'm training with now is affiliated with Jackson Wink and Rowan Wrestling Academy, which is some good places. And between that and other places like Fitness Edge and King Rock, surrounding gyms like that, I can get a good training camp in. Obviously I miss Jimmy and those guys. I just can't get out there as much as I'd like to.
Yeah. That Lumberton is now become, that surrounding area has become more. They're starting to get onto the MMA scene as far as having guys down there, as it was almost, I wouldn't say a black hole of MMA. There's some guys who wanted to fight, but it was very limited as far as where you can go to as train, unless you want to go to Fayetteville with the guys up there at Team Rock. They're coming back onto the scene. I want to ask you about this fight because you're showing yourself right here. You got a guy who is about 12, 13 years younger than you. He's on the 3-fight winning streak right now. How do you see yourself stacking up against him?
I definitely think it's going to be a tough fight. Chad, you know me. I'm not one to take easy fights. And Shamik is definitely someone not to take lightly. He has some things up, some positives to his side. I feel like I have things that's positive to my side. He's definitely a tough guy. But obviously, I have plans on coming out with him to win. see holes in his stuff. I'm sure he sees holes in mine as well. But I definitely feel like this would be a good win for me and him, especially me with the layoff and an up and coming guy like that. And he definitely likes to grind, and I think that's something. I think it's going to be a really good fight. Win, lose, or draw. I think we have some things that's really going to flow well as far as the fight goes.
I'll leave you with this. How much are you looking forward to be inside the cage after the 7 years?
Let me tell you, it's I remember way back when I fought my first amateur fight. Let's just say when I fought like JJ, I was it was a title fight, and I remember walking up that cage and leading up to the fight, how excited I was, and it's like a high school dating feeling, and it's just I'm kind of reliving some of that, I guess, because it's been so long. Like I am so ready just to smell the cage, It's in my blood. It's what I've done for a long time, and I love it, And to get back to something I love, I can't explain that feeling. So, I'm extremely excited. I put a lot into promoting this fight and promoting myself to get back on the scene. 7 years, there's a whole new group of people out there, a group of new faces, and I'm excited to try to go on one last run and kind of establish myself with the new crowd that's in here. So win, lose, or draw is definitely going to be a good fight, and I can't wait.
Shane Tyner coming back inside the cage, see what he can do that for one last time. Thank you very much, buddy. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Shane's opponent is Shamik Harvey, who right now as a pro is at 5-1. When Shane had his last fight in 2016, Shamik was 3 years away from making his amateur debut. He went 5-2 as an amateur and now is on a 3-fight winning streak. Earlier, I spoke to Shamik about how everything is going.
Feel great. I'm dialed in for this fight. We've been training like it's a championship fight, and it actually might be my hardest fight camp to date. We're looking at a couple more fights, and then we're trying to get on the contender series, so it's very important I get this win coming Saturday.
You watched the video, his ear literally flies off during the match, and he keeps fighting.
Nah, coach already told me we've been preparing like it's Brandon Moreno, so I understand he has had a lot of time off, but at the end of the day he could have been training. We don't know, so we just preparing like he the best fighter in the world, so nothing really changes for the time layoff. Yeah, he has experience, so that also could be dangerous in the fight, so we're just ready for everything.
I was going to say, how dangerous could this fight be if you're looking forward to more fights after this, but you're not looking past him in that aspect?
Yeah, I mean, every fight is dangerous because you're throwing punches and kicks at fast speed, so it only takes one shot to close the show, so every fight is dangerous. That's why we focus on one fight at a time, and then after that, we'll see where we go from there.
Tell us about the training going on here, because you guys got some top-level guys. You're in here training day in, day out, especially in this heat you got going on in here.
Yeah.
How's it feel?
I think that's part of the reason why it's been the hardest fight camp. The heat is summertime. It gets past 100 degrees in here. But yeah, we got a lot of high-level guys. John, who's on the main event, he's fighting with me. He's been taking my game to the next level. We've been doing a lot of rounds. We got Josh, Brian, E-Man, all those guys like that. Jamie's fighting on the card as well. So we just been basically pushing each other because we trying to be the best gym in the world.
Another pro looking to take home a win in the Carolina Combat family is Jonathan Martin. He'll take on Georges Copa. With close to the same identical records, Martin has a 4-1 record, while Copa stands at 3-1. Both men are coming off wins this past winter. Copa picked up a win in Virginia this past February, while Martin won the Aries lightweight title this past March in Tennessee. We spoke to Jonathan Martin earlier this week.
It's honestly hard to describe how I'm feeling for this fight. I've been basically in camp preparing for a fight that I had in June, and then that got canceled because my opponent pulled out. So I was peaking then we just had more time, bring it down some, and then we're peaking now. So in other words, I'm feeling great. I mean, I haven't felt this way for a fight before, so. I'm excited.
Tell us about that last fight. It went all 5 rounds. You got a title up in Tennessee.
Oh.
What wave are you taking from that fight into this one here?
Well, from that last fight, I'm just keeping that same mentality, championship mentality. I know I can go 5 rounds. I was fresh in the 5th round. I was feeling good. So that same mentality, I'm coming in this fight with a championship mindset. Even though I'm not defending that belt, even though I'm still champion over there, I'm not defending that belt for this organization. In my mind, I'm defending that belt. I'm coming in there with that mentality and that drive.
What do you know about your opponent?
I know he's a pretty good striker. A couple of my teammates have fought him before. I've seen his fights. I just believe my skill set is on a whole nother level. I'm not taking this fight lightly at all. Like I said, I'm going into this fight with a championship mentality. But yeah, as far as I know, I feel like I'm just on a whole nother level, and yeah, I'm not taking no losses.
There always seems to be a common thread in local MMA. This one comes by way of Fight Fort 10. Over 2 years ago, Copa took on Josh Monsinger. Copa lost that fight by decision. Who will be in Martin's corner come Saturday night? His teammate, Josh Monsinger. Aaron Miro takes on Levi Whitlow. This is a pro debut for both young men. As amateurs, Miro compiled a record of 3-1, while Whitlow went 4-2. Both men did compete against each other as amateurs, with Miro getting the win by unanimous decision. And the man calling the action on Saturday night will be Dylan McGrath. I spoke to him about this incredible night of fight action.
Voice of MMA in the Carolinas, that is Mr. Dylan McGrath. How's it going out there?
Thank you, Chaz. I'm on the road, as you can see, not my usual setup, not my usual sound. As production professionals, you and I, we like to hold ourselves to a certain level of, because I know you get on with a lot of these fighters and they have, the smartphone that's barely hanging on with the crack screen. I have the ring light, the professional camera, but today we're roughing it out here in Texas. I'm out here traveling for work. But there's no way that I would miss talking about fights with you, and there's no way I would miss the action this weekend at Fight For It.
And you're in one of my favorite places out there in Tejas, middle of the heat, enjoying some barbecue. Soon to be enjoying some barbecue.
Yeah. Like I told Chaz before the call, I don't like to front load all the good stuff about Texas. I like to kind of take it one day at a time. I'll probably have some barbecue right before I jump on the plane, and that'll knock me out for the ride home.
Now, I was going to say, whenever you get back, if you're coming back on Friday, wrap that sucker up in some aluminum foil.
I'll try to bring you some ribs or something. Yeah, brother.
Some beautiful brisket. Well, we can talk about these fights. It's going to be a smorgasbord. I don't think that works for barbecue. Whatever. It's
a cornucopia, if you will.
Cornucopia. It's leather. The meat will be thrown out there in the Spartanburg, South Carolina. Let's just go there. We got the Taylor family fighting. This is great. Nothing brings families together like punching other people in the face. And you got, I believe, 2 title fights with the junior Mason Taylor fighting, along with the dad Ryan Taylor fighting.
Yeah.
Congrats to them for getting all this way, and it's going to be a heck of a fight.
Yeah, when we first started doing the youth fights for Fight For It, kickboxing is one thing, MMA is another, obviously, but I've always been a little old-fashioned, a little squeamish watching the kids fight sometimes, I support them, and I think that they're incredible athletes, especially, people like Mason Taylor, and I think watching Mason Taylor fight and some of the other people, namely Madison Reed and some of these other juniors that we've had at Fight For It, they've kind of changed my mind because I watch them go out there. Not only are they technically sound, but Mason Taylor has a lot of fun in there. Like, he looks like he is having the time of his life when he's in that ring. And I love watching him fight. I think that he and Madison Reed and a couple other very select youth athletes have really done a 180 on me when it comes to watching these fights, where before I kind of called them a little, I don't know, cautiously, but now I'm enjoying them as much as I enjoy the adult fights. I have just as much enthusiasm for them. So yeah, I'm very excited to see Mason Taylor get back in there. Every time this kid comes out, it's punches and bunches, as his dad says. But I would say kicks as well. Like, he likes to throw tornado kicks. I mean, if you watch this kid shadowbox before the show, he does so much stuff in there with perfect technique that he's never even thrown in the ring against a real opponent. So I'm excited to see the continued development of people like Mason Reed. If you look at what his team, Lake Norman Muay Thai, has done with Dakota Gray since he came onto that team, and now he's going to be fighting adults. Yeah, I mean, if Mason Taylor sticks with Muay Thai, and especially with his current team from now until he's Dakota Gray's age, I mean, I can't imagine how good he's going to be. So I'm very much excited to see him compete once again. And then his father, you know, Ryan Taylor, it doesn't get much more, I don't know, inspirational in terms of a storyline than this. But I remember the first time we watched Ryan, he was also fighting on the same card. I think this is their third time sharing a card together. And the first time my co-commentator was Taylor, and Taylor Starling. And, you know, she's a mom first, and watching Ryan win in front of his son, it kind of did something to her. And just being that close to her, I kind of started to soak in that vibe too. And I got sentimental as well. So we were both a little teary-eyed watching Ryan Taylor's first fight. So when that's your first exposure to someone and they get that win, and that you have that feel-good moment that you can think about with them, you get invested. And I think there's a lot of people who watch Fight For It that are now invested in this similar storyline. I mean, we even had the promo package before the show a couple days ago get posted, and they were featured. Both of them were featured as well. And Ryan just seems like a good guy, and he seems like a guy who's a big part of that Lake Norman Muay Thai team. Like, he brings a lot to that team in terms of morale and leadership, and now carrying the flag into battle time and time again. So yeah, I mean, as far as a technical breakdown of his fight goes, he's very much got this like true Dutch kickboxing Muay Thai traditional approach, which I like to see, especially at this level, somebody with really, really solid fundamentals. But if you talk about fundamentals, you cannot underestimate Brandon Rollins' fundamentals. I mean, this is a guy who has had a very limited, over the past couple of years, he's had a limited exposure to sparring partners and teammates, but his activity level as far as like fighting has never gone down. As often as he can get a fight, he has a fight. And he's fought a lot of people that are very, very high level and very good. And he's also fought people that are not so good. And I think that fighting people that aren't so good is actually good for you as a fighter, because people throw things that you don't always see coming from someone who's on that higher level. And I think Brandon just has a very like hard to deal with style overall if you can't make him back up. And I don't really see Brandon back up a lot. He has to be in there with somebody very, very, very good. And I think Ryan Taylor's very aggressive, just like his son. And so I'm thinking he's going to be trying to get inside the kicking range, to get through the kicks and keep this in boxing range and make Brandon back up. Because if you're constantly backing up, especially in that cage where you don't have the ropes, you will eventually get cornered. And moreover, you can't kick when you're moving backwards. I mean, you can, but you can't put the same stank on it, you know? Yeah,
those panels will be probably unforgiving if you start getting in the back of them. Yeah. This is a fight that is going to be really intriguing for anybody who wants to see quality kickboxing here in the Carolinas. And coincidentally, these fights will not be on the Lifetime Hallmark channel, so hopefully nobody will be crying after any fight. So that should be.
I would say that, you know, when it comes to both Brandon Rollins and Ryan Taylor, and just like I said about Mason, there's very few people that have competed as much as they have for Fight For It as these guys. And it's great to see Fight For It being like, you guys have been with us for show after show after show. You always put on good fights. We're going to reward you by giving you a title fight, giving you these big fights. And from what I heard, they tried to get this fight to be full rules Muay Thai. It didn't happen, and I don't know all the details about why it didn't happen, but I've been asking Marcelo for full rules Muay Thai for Fight For It for a long time. I know Trevor has as well. And I just think there should be more shows, especially in South Carolina, where they're a little bit more cool with stuff like that, for there to be elbow pads and elbows, and Conflicts doing it, and Walker Vivian's fight nights are doing it down in Florence. And I'd love to see more full rules Muay Thai. It's a shame that this fight isn't going to be full rules, but I would like to see that for Ryan Taylor in the future, because I know that's a rule set that he's very interested in as well. So I think both these guys are very, very deserving at the end of the day. And it's going to be hard for me to like see one of them lose, but I know it's going to feel really good for me to see one of them win. Ryan's got such a good story, but I've known Brandon for 10 years. We both knew each other before we even started training. We kind of came up together, you know, playing video games out of high school. So, you know, I've seen Brandon kind of go from the start of his career to now, where he's just so active and so well known in this scene. It would be great for me to see him get a big win like this too. So it's going to be one of those situations where I'm kind of rooting for both guys. But when you've been doing this as long as I have and you're as connected with the fighters as I am, you kind of are in that spot almost every weekend, right, Chaz? You know that feeling.
Yeah. There's going to be some good feelings. There's a stacked amateur MMA card coming up on that Saturday night too. What fight are you looking out for on that side of the card?
Well, I would try to hide my biases here, but I don't think it's a secret at this point that I'm a big fan of both the entire Hayastan MMA team and the Carolina Combat team. And I'm also a huge fan of Brent Williams. And so I'm going to go with Brent Williams versus Emmanuel Simpson. I think this fight is absolutely fireworks. I'm excited to see Brent compete again. The last time he was fighting at Fight For It, he won a title in kickboxing against a guy who was a kickboxing specialist, like a person that I didn't really give Brent his due in that fight, even being a massive believer in him as an MMA fighter. I thought Omer would just be a little too much for him, but he made Omer back up the entire time and basically took no damage and really, really impressed me. And I'm thinking he impressed some other people too. And I'm excited to see him back in the MMA cage. And as far as a strength of opponent goes, Emmanuel Simpson, what an athlete, but also what a team he comes from with that Hayastan team. I mean, his last fight against Addison Hendry, he looked markedly improved from the last time I saw him, markedly improved. So, you know, Brent is really, I DM with Brent back and forth a lot. Every time he has a fight, he always messages me a prediction. And he thinks that, you know, last fight, everybody said he was just a grappler, just a wrestler, and he couldn't strike. And then he went in there against a kickboxing champion and took the belt. This time he's going into this fight with the mindset of everybody thinks I'm obsessed with striking now, and they're sleeping on my wrestling and grappling. So he's going to go in there and try to out grapple the Hayastan guy, which is a crazy strategy, but you know, that's the game. You have to have that level of confidence. You have to have that level of belief in yourself. And from the first fight he had when I think he was like 18 or 19 years old, Brent Williams was a big believer in Brent Williams. So he kind of converted me into a big believer as well. I'm thinking this fight has fight of the night potential written all over it. I'm thinking Emmanuel is definitely going to be looking to back Brent up to the cage and get that Hayastan system on the wall working, get that Go Korchevichian magic going on the mat, and holding Brent down and controlling him and submitting him. And I'm thinking Brent's going to have a little bit of an advantage on the feet, but in the last fight, Emmanuel's boxing was so crispy, especially against Addison, who's a nice boxer in his own right, nice kickboxer, and has nice movement in his own right. So I don't know. This one's a very big toss-up for me because I think both these guys are ultra talented, and they're both on what I consider two of the best teams in the area. So absolutely. I think that they're both improving rapidly fight to fight as well still.
Yeah. And that sets up a huge night. There's a lot of guys from that the Carolina Combat system coming out, that gym coming out on this card. You just named one of them, but there's going to be two more fights on the pro side that feature Carolina Combat guys. First, you start off with Aaron Marino taking on Levi Whitlow. I believe Whitlow is on the same team as Brent Williams down here in Jimmo. That's a rematch, if I'm correct.
Yes, that's correct. And I loved their first fight. And, you know, Castro's also a guy who's beaten Emmanuel Simpson now at this point. Or he beat Emmanuel Simpson by TKO, I believe. So Castro has had really good fights for Fight For It. He's one of my favorite guys to watch because he's just so aggressive, and he's also, and I don't mean this in a bad way, he's aggressively traditionally Mexican in his boxing. His boxing is so pressure heavy forward, and he's cutting angles so rapidly that sometimes it's hard to even like look at it and be like, oh, he's doing this, this, and this when you're calling the action. Like, he's one of those guys that you kind of just, sometimes you have to sit back and just watch and then call the ending of the sequence. He's really quick. But, you know, Brent and I have talked about Levi as well. And Brent was saying that Levi has changed dramatically since he came over and started training with them as well. And his reach is going to be a problem. Apparently, Levi has a very, very good jab now. And I think that is going to be a big difference maker between his style back then and his style now. Is, you know, everything's built off of that jab. And the better your jab is, the better your foundation is as a striker for all of your setups, right? I know Aaron has a great jab, but he's also not going to have the reach that Levi does. So when you get that jab versus jab battle going, sometimes the guy who's longer just he dominates that fight. And I think that's going to be where the fight is decided for Levi Whitlow and Castro, is in the jab and in the boxing range.
Yeah. Moving on to the next fight, we got Georges Copa versus Jonathan Martin. This sets up another great fight. I believe these two guys are coming off of wins back in the spring, winter time. I know Jonathan picked up the title out in Tennessee. George has been putting on pretty good record there. What do you see out of these two guys?
Man, Jonathan Martin is what an athlete, but also what a team he's on. I mean, you can't really underestimate the strength of the training partners, and we'll obviously talk about Shamik Harvey here in a second. But when it comes to Jonathan Martin, he's really kind of flown under the radar on that team for a little while. But now the cat's out of the bag, right? Now people know that he's got that belt out in Tennessee. Now people kind of know the deal, and there's also a little bit more tape on there of him. What I see with him is that classic Carolina combat system coming into effect, but I also see that influence of that Brian Battle-esque striking, the feinting coming into play for him as well. He's a brown belt in that Gokor Chivichian system, and I think that traditionally Copa has struggled a little bit against stronger grapplers, but against Motsinger, his teammate, I thought George did extremely well with the grappling, and I think that he's gotten a lot better in that realm since I've seen him fight a very, very strong grappler. I would think Motsinger was the most recent person he's fought that's had the best grappling, but I would say Jonathan's a little step ahead of him. So we're going to see if Copa has continued to rise. And I think the big difference between Motsinger and Martin is that Martin has a much deeper breadth of submission threat to finish, whereas Motsinger, most of his wins by submission, or most of his game submission wise, is kind of from the back. I've seen Martin attack a lot of different submissions from a lot of different positions, so I'm thinking he's got more opportunities for finishing on the ground than most of George's previous opponents do. But George, you can't really underestimate the experience. I mean, this is a guy who he was already established and kind of respected and kind of a little bit of a legend even when I started training like 7 years ago. So this is a guy who stayed active that whole time, won belts that whole time, pretty much has fought in every rule set for combat sports in the Carolinas that's been offered. I think, he's done jiu-jitsu tournaments. He's done jiu-jitsu super fights. He's done kickboxing. He's done boxing. He's done MMA. I even think I heard people say that he's a karate champion as well. But I think I've remembered because I know he goes to a very, REMA's a very big school on traditional martial arts. So I wouldn't be surprised. So I think when you've seen as much and you've done as much as Copa has done, if you beat a guy like this, it's just like, it's a big statement. It's like, I am gatekeeping what it means to be a veteran fighter in this region, and I am the standard by which all fighters in this region should be set. And I think he is one of those guys. He's been around that long, and he's one of those guys who's always been kind of at the top end of the card. There's not really a lot of George Copa fights you see that are jerking the curtain unless he's on a super big show with superstars. But I would say that he's one of the standout names you'll see time and time again in this scene. If you look at the people he's fought a lot of guys who have gone on to the big show, and some of the guys he's fought that are on the big show now, he beat them. So you can't underestimate him, but I would say that Jonathan Martin is probably going to be the favorite for a lot of people going into this just because of that grappler versus striker matchup. But it is kind of that classic matchup, and we all know that the striker always has that puncher, or in Copa's chance in particular, a kicking chance as well. His kicking game could be the difference maker here, especially that front kick. He's got a great front kick to the body.
Yeah, I having grappled both Jonathan and his teammate out there, Josh Motsinger. Jonathan will tell you straight up, he's the better wrestler, grappler than Josh is, and I felt it unfortunately on Memorial Day. But but it's that should be an awesome fight, like you said. The thread that goes through both of these guys is Josh Motsinger, and this is going to be a heck of a fight. The last one we'll leave you with is sort of a more plays on your heartstrings, I guess, with Shane Tyner coming back after 7 years away from the MMA scene, going against somebody I would not want to be in the cage with after 7 years away. And Shamik Harvey, this looks like, and I'm looking at the stats right here, Shane Tyner versus Shamik Harvey. right now, Tapology, whatever you want to say to it, and we're taping this thing on Monday night. Shane Tyner right now, there's 4% people predicting him to win that fight with, again, Shamik Harvey's 96th. Tell us about it. What do you see in this fight?
Well, I mean, it's kind of what you said, right? You want to root for Shane as the guy who's coming into this off of such a long layoff. And if you follow Shane on social media, and I know you did the interview with him recently, he's an interesting character. He's part of that Lumbee MMA group, but also he's doing a huge cut for this. Like, I think he started this camp at like 148 or something like that, and he's going down to 125. And you know, being a little bit of a more seasoned fighter, you have to get extra medicals, and there's extra stress in the camp as far as scans go and stuff like that. And you know, it's hard to cut weight, that much weight, when you're 20 years old. So if he makes the weight, and I'm sure he will, he seems like he's on track to hit it. I think that a big thing in this fight that I'm going to be looking for is how fast does he get drained? How fast does he get tired? Because Shamik is a guy, like you said, you wouldn't want to fight him coming back after 7 years. I wouldn't want to fight him tomorrow on my best day, injury free, with 100 pounds on him. You know, like he's a guy who has such a pace and such a ferocity to his grappling that if you can't keep up with him, he'll drown you. And I think that that's probably the most likely scenario that we see here is we see Shamik drag him into the deep water and drown him. Probably a big back take. He's so hard to deal with on your back. I'm sure you know from experience, but watching him against a lot of these guys, it's like when he gets the back or when he gets like top half guard, the fight usually is either over or it's changed dramatically from that point on. The only time I've really seen Shamik Harvey struggle in a fight is when a guy is as technical as him, but a little bit more athletic. And there's not many guys out there that are more athletic than Shamik. So I think Shane's going to have a big test on his hands and a big win if he could actually pull this off, because, you know, Shamik's a guy who I think is big show bound, baby. I think that that's a team that has a lot of guys on it that could go to the show. John Martin's one of them. But Shamik's, you know, especially at 125, if he's as good as he was at 35, it's not going to be long before we see him on the big screen.
And I'll let you go after I ask this. What is the upside for Shane? You know, he hasn't. God bless him. He hasn't won in 10 years. Mm-hmm. He's coming back after 7 years. It's a tough slog to get back to getting over that hill. Getting it back in the cage, then making sure you do what you can to get the win. That's a tough hill to go up. What's the upside?
Well, you know, I think the biggest thing is, you know, if you come back and after that long and you get a win against a guy like this, you know, you can still bang, you know, you can still do it. And maybe he doesn't even win, but still feels that way after, because you can go out and have a good showing.
Moral victory.
Yeah, you can have moral victories at that age or in this game. We see it all the time where it's like we've watched a lot of fights together where neither guy's stock goes down. You know, it either goes up or it stays the same. And I think it's always harder when you're his age to just get in there. So the fact that he's getting in there against like the toughest guy you could possibly ask for in that weight class says a lot about Shane as a person. And watching his interview, he just seems like a very earthly soul. Like he seems like a guy who's just like he reminds me of the more traditional martial arts guys, where he's really in this not to really make a statement for other people, but to test himself. And I think that there's some cool matchups for him out there if this fight goes okay for him. But he doesn't even have to win. If he does well enough to want to do another one in 2 months or 3 months, if he gets out of this without a lot of damage, I think there's some cool fights out there for him, especially the Oxendine promotion that's on a reservation. You don't have to worry about getting scans, baby. Like, you know, there's no commission out here. We'll just do whatever. I think there's some cool fights for him. I think there's still guys in his age bracket, you know, as we call it, like MMA Masters division or whatever. There's some guys that want to compete, and he can do a lot of weights. He has abs at 145, and he's cutting down all the way to 125. So the upside for Shane is that if he does well, if he has a good showing, if he has a moral victory and he escapes with no damage, we could see him again. Or if he comes out super aggressive and he gets that big Cinderella story finish moment, I mean, what a way to like come back and also maybe even end your career. Maybe you just want to get that one win and bounce, or maybe you get one win and you turn it into something else. I mean, look at Josh Oxendine versus Dave Morgan. You know, how many people saw that fight going the way it did at Dave's age and with Dave's record? But he put it on Josh for 5 rounds. I mean, granted, there's the story out there that Josh was injured or he had COVID or whatever, but he put it on him, and you never know. It's a fight. It could be anybody's night on any given night, right? Any given Sunday.
Exactly. That fight will be in August, a rematch of that fight. Dylan, you're out there in the Lone Star State. You're out there getting the brisket, getting the barbecue, but you're going to come back on Saturday, and you're going to be ripe and ready for these great fights.
A true homecoming. I cannot wait. Fight for it's always a blast. We got another one coming up in September. So I cannot wait to be back with Fight For It this Saturday, and I'll see you there, my friend.
Before you go to DFW, make sure you stop at either Hard Eights in Cobble, Texas, or Terry Black's Barbecue in South Dallas.
Okay. So I've been to Terry Black's in Austin.
Okay.
It's really great. Yep. My planned stop for this trip is Goldie's Barbecue. Everybody I talked to about Dallas said that you got to drive to Fort Worth and go to Goldie's. It's won a lot of awards apparently. So Thursday before my flight, I'm going to grab some Goldie's, and then I'll be coming on back to the Carolinas on Friday, and we'll be rocking and rolling there in Spartanburg at the downtown Marriott on Saturday.
Listen to this, folks. We got your MMA info, and we've got your barbecue
scoops right here, baby. Absolutely.
Okay. Enjoy your time out there. Safe travels, and we'll see you back.
So Dylan will be there, and I'll be there. Will you be there? Make sure you get your tickets. They're on sale right now. And just in case the unfortunate event happens where you can't be there in person, Fight For It will have a pay-per-view live stream. Make sure you check out their socials for the official link, not the ones that pop up in the comment section, the official link. We'll be there also covering the highlights and getting interviews. Everyone, thank you so very much for watching. Make sure you share this with all your friends. Get ready for these awesome fights. We'll see you Saturday night in Spartanburg, South Carolina.